Hello everyone, thanks for dropping by. I'd like to give this video a different slant and I'll ask two questions. The first question is, what does Treyarch, Infinity Ward, DICE, Bohemia Interactive, City Interactive and Ubisoft have in common? The common thread, and it's not first person shooters. Here's a tip: Black Ops, Black Ops 2, Call of Duty 4, Modern Warfare 2, Modern Warfare 3 and the new Call of Duty Ghosts. Bad Company, Battlefield 2, Bad Company 2, Medal of Honor and the new Battlefield 4, Armour, Armour 2, Operation Arrowhead expansion of Armour 2 and Armour 3, Sniper Ghost Warrior and Sniper Ghost Warrior 2 and the Ghost Recon series. The answer is all of those 19 games from the 6 developers all feature American military weaponry and American military personnel as part of the campaign and as part, naturally, of the multiplayer. The only ones which differs, and the only reason I bought Armour 2, was British Armed Forces and the Army of the Czech Republic and private military company in the reinforcements expansion package for Armour 2. I liked to play my own country's military, as I was tired of playing as an American. During Call of Duty 4 I always used to try and pick the Russian side if I couldn't play as the SAS, naturally. I know what you're all saying, that the SAS were in Call of Duty 4, but only in name only. The SAS in Call of Duty 4 did not use the weapons that they use in real life. It was all American weaponry, and that is ridiculous. In fact, if you look at the opening scene in the SAS HQ on the wall rack, you can see all the weaponry that's used in the game. In the game the SAS use the M4 carbine, which they don't use in real life. They use the Damaco C8SFW carbine and the C8 CQB carbine, which is close quarter battle. In the game the SAS have used the G3KA4 rifle, but they have also used the HK33KA rifle for bodyguard duties and the HK53. In the game they used extensively the G36C, which is ridiculous because the SAS have never used that. Other special forces used it, but not the SAS. The SAS used the G36K. They also had in the game the M249 SAW squad automatic weapon support weapon. Once again, the SAS have never used that. Remember, Call of Duty 4 is supposed to be set several years in the near future. The SAS used the FN Mini-IMI Para version, which was specifically designed for special forces. British classification L110A1, and of course the FN General Purpose Machine Gun they've used, classification L7A1. The M1, M21 and R700 sniper rifles were both in the game, and the SAF have never used them, ever. For moderately range sniping, instead of the M21 they've used the G3 SGI sniper. Now they're using the HK417. For longer range sniping, they also have used the Accuracy International, a British company, the L96A1 and the Arctic Warfare version L115A, which can also be used in a Super Magnum round. For long range shooting, they have used the Barrett. They classify it as L8281, but I've only been able to find one instance in Operation Trent in November 2001. Again, Call of Duty is supposed to be based in the future. The SAS use the AS-50, which is also used by the American SEALs, but for long range shooting instead of the Barrett, they use the AW-50, which is every bit as good, but it's simply bolt action instead of automatic, so it's more reliable. In the handgun, in the game there was the M9 Beretta from Italy, the American Colt 1911, Captain Price's gun, and the USP .45. The SAS have never used any of those guns in the past, not the present, and especially not in the future, as the SAS in real life use the Browning High Power, the Sig Sauer P226, 228 and 229, and they have also used the Glock 17, not the Glock 18 that we saw in Modern Warfare 2. The shotguns, once again, Americanized W1200 and M1014. The SAS used the Remington 870 pump action shotgun, not the W1200. But they do use the M1014, which is essentially the Italian Benelli M4, Benelli M4 Super 90, classification L128A1. The MP5, naturally we know that the SAS use that, and for Modern Warfare 2 the MP5K. In the game the M203, but the SAS now use the HKAG/C, which is the modified Heckler & Koch AG30. The developers, Affinity Ward, the original developers, they may be top-notch developers, but when it comes to doing research, they're sloppy, they're unprofessional, they're lazy, and they don't have any imagination to think that what another foreign military has. I suspect the only research they did for the weaponry of Call of Duty 4 was to go into a local American gun shop or a gun fair and just pick the weapons that they liked. As I said, very sloppy, very unprofessional, and just plain lazy. Modern Warfare 2 had, with Task Force 141 being an international task force group, they had a bigger selection of more international weaponry, but once again they didn't do the research to see what sort of weaponry those sort of soldiers would use in the real world. They slowly got things better in Modern Warfare 3, but by that time the Call of Duty franchise was dying and the Modern Warfare story was coming to an end, so it was too little too late. The predominantly mistake of developers is they're lazy. They have no imagination, and they just don't want to isolate the core demographics of the American first-person shooter gaming community. The same with the publishers. They're also lazy, they're money hungry, and they're terrified of isolating and pissing off the American gaming public that play first-person shooter games, as they think that the people that do are too stupid to know that other countries have militaries all of their own, and other countries have their own versions of weaponry, that don't necessarily include American weapons unless these other countries have purchased American small arms. But when it comes to actual research for accuracy, then they just don't give a damn, and they think that the public that buy their games don't give a damn. Maybe some of you do, maybe some of you don't. I myself prefer accuracy in a game, which is where Bohemian Interactive did do the research for British Armed Forces expansion and the Czech Armed Forces, and those characters in the game did have the right weaponry. Also, the games themselves where Americans are in every game going. It's not as if the world is short of bad blood, where America has no say in the matter. I found a Wikipedia site called List of Territorial Disputes. I'll put the link down there. I've not counted Africa, South America, and most of Southeast Asia, or island conflicts, because the weaponry and equipment on both sides generally is identical, and I wanted two sides, two factions. The ones which took my eye was Russia versus Japan over the Kuril Islands, Kuwait versus Saudi Arabia over two desert regions called Qaruth and al-Maradin, and Saudi Arabia versus United Arab Emirates over their border. They haven't decided where it's going to be, so no Arab brotherly love lost there. Then we have a trio, Israel versus Lebanon versus Syria over an area called Sheba Farms. Those three haven't decided who gets what bit yet. In the Far East, which should interest Americans, Japan versus South Korea over the Tsushima Island. We have Greece versus Turkey over the Aegean, that's an age-old conflict. And France versus Italy over a Mont Blanc summit. But you didn't know that. France and Italy have bad blood. Then we have another trio, Austria versus Germany versus Switzerland over Lake Constance. Those three can't decide which country gets which bit of that lake, so that's a three-part faction. And Spain versus Portugal over a little area called Olivenza. And in the Nordic region, bring that up again, Finland versus Sweden over Åland Islands. The Swedes would get their ass kicked if that ever kicked off, because the Finns are riflemen and the Swedes are just Swedes. And Lithuania versus Poland over the Vilnius region, but it's by an area called Königsberg, which used to belong to Prussia, so the Prussians will be involved in that three-way little squabble. And the last one I built is Britain and Cyprus as an alliance versus Turkey fighting over Cyprus. The Bad Company and Bad Company 2 had just two factions, same as the new Battlefield 4 and the previous Battlefield 3. We had the Americans with the white hats and the big bad Russians per usual. You need more than two factions for a first-person shooter game to mix and match the various matches and missions up. Not so much armour, because armour doesn't have matches, it has missions. But anyway, in Call of Duty 4 you had the SAS with American weapons, the US Marine Corps, who Infinity Ward gave them the M4 carbine, where in real life the US Marine Corps uses the M16A4 because the Marines are riflemen, not infantry. They had Op 4 with Galahad, whatever his name is, the Arab, and ultra-nationalists in the campaign, and the big bad Russians, Spetsnaz, in the multiplayer. Same again in Modern Warfare 2, we had 6 factions. We had the International Task Force 141 with a variety of weapons, most of them are American. We had the American SEALs, the US Rangers, the Russian Spetsnaz, the big bad Russians again, and the Russian in the campaign, the, where are we? Russian airborne soldiers invading America and Shadow Company. We had the Middle East Coalition, which was Arabs again, and the Brazilian militia, which just were a multi-weaponed fighting force where the selection of different types of weapons were probably justified. And the final one in the trilogy story, we had the SAS, with America's Delta Force, Spetsnaz, the big bad Russians again, the Inner Circle, that was Makarov's crowd. We have the African militia, which is like the Brazilian militia, and just are not a hodgepodge of different types of weapons. We have GIGN, which is the French version of the SAS, and we had the private military contractors, which also had a selection of weaponry that probably purchased from abroad, which probably justified the range of weapons in Modern Warfare 3. But once again, the Infinity Ward didn't do the research and equip the various factions, apart from the militias, with weapons that would be used by these factions and military personnel in real life. That's where the armour comes in. The Armour 2, the expansion, it was a fictional country which they don't, if any developers are watching this, if you can't do it with a real country and a real region conflict, then you have to do what Armour did and invent a country. In that Armour case, a country called South Zagoria, which was, from where I can gather, based around South Ossetia on the Russian southern frontier. The area was called Chernarus, with a small number of Russian nationals in it. And the factions in that were 4 factions: the US Marine Corps, in other words the Americans again, the Russian Armed Forces, the big bad Russians, the Chelarussian movement of the Red Star, the citizens of Chernarus, which I think if you killed the citizens or damaged or killed them by blowing up civilian buildings, you were penalised in the game. And the NAPA, National Party, which was a sort of guerrilla movement. There was only just American weapons and Russian weapons in that 2 lots. The Operation Arrowhead also had a setting in inventive country called Takistan, which was a mixture of the Pakistani northwest frontier and Afghanistan. And we had the US Army, again, can't have a war without America in these first-person shooter games, yet. The KSK German 601st Special Air Forces group of the Czech Republic, the Takistan Army, and the People's Takistan, which were a guerrilla group modelled on the Taliban. The final one is the Armour 3 factions, which are 7 of them. We have the USA again, the SAS, the KSA, which is Germany's Special Forces, GROM, which is Poland's, and Il Nono, which is Italy's version of the SAS, and the ISI, Greek Resistance, which is a guerrilla group, versus the big bad Iranians. Like the big bad Iranians were the main antagonists in the Battlefield 3 and in Battlefield 4 we got the big bad Chinese and the Russians for Russian, Chinese and American weaponry. The fact is, where I'm going with all this is, the Americans are overrepresented in this game, in first-person shooter games. Why? As I said before, the developers and the publishers are too lazy to think up other nations' military. That's why I come up to my second question. This is aimed at primarily you Americans who are either in the US military, ex-US military, or the American civilians which play first-person shooters, which are age 12 to 25 and are Activision and EA's two-legged cash cows. My question is this: if Treyarch, Infinity Ward, DICE, Bohemian Interactive, City Interactive and Ubisoft next first-person shooter game was an American free zone, as in no American personnel in both the campaign and the multiplayer, no American weaponry unless the side that they picked had one or two American weapons, and no American vehicles, would you buy the game, or would you as an American think that the game was unpatriotic, the developer and the publisher were unpatriotic and un-American, and would you boycott the game? That's all I wanted to say on this. As I said, it's a little bit different from the previous one, so answers on a postcard please. Once again, you know the routine: comment, like, dislike, wherever it is, it's up to you. So until next time, bye.